record to the cloud so that we can post the recording tomorrow. And all right, guys, so tonight's class is the duties of a regional treasurer. And we have with us Baroness Magdalena, who is regional for the southern region, I'm assuming?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Southern. Perfect. And so she's going to tell us a little bit about what that job entails. And so Magdalena, why don't you just start out with talking to us about what kind of duties come along with that job?
Well, one of the more common phrases is cat herding within the SCA, and I think that's probably very apropos for pretty much any kingdom office, regional or otherwise, but definitely regional, because anywhere, depending on what group you are, whether you're central, northern, or southern, you have anywhere from 8 to I think 10 groups underneath you, and you're having to coordinate with all of them. And the problem with that is, with those groups, you also have to deal with their particular financial institution, which you would think that all financial institutions have the exact same timeline. That's not necessarily the case. And so you're having to, I apologize, my dog is looking out the window and seeing another dog.
That's fine.
So you're not only are you having to deal with another person within an office, you're also having to deal with a completely different financial institution that you have zero control over. So basically what you're trying to do is, on a monthly basis, deal with another person within an office who is also dealing with their financial institution to get their financial records to then reconcile their monthly report. Ideally, we would like to have those reports within the first week or so of the month, so that you can get your reporting done and get everybody up to speed, get their records balanced according to their bank statement, and then kind of have like this revolving, what's the word I'm looking for? Check register, so that whenever Kingdom comes and says, hey, what are you guys looking like, you can say, this is where I'm at for the month. Sometimes it's great if you can have that done by the middle of the month. That's not always the case. That's more the ideal. That's utopia. That's not always reality of the situation. Everybody has lives. This is a volunteer program, and so you have to kind of like give some leeway when it comes to reporting. Sometimes mistakes happen, whether it's the financial institution side, whether it's the office side, or sometimes it's even your side, whether as to not, you have to be able to communicate not only with your downline, but with your upline. Mistakes happen. Sometimes something gets missed, whether it's we weren't expecting an interest charge that we got hit with, or more importantly, an interest charge that we gained information, or I'm sorry, gained money. But at the end of the day, we need to account for that $2, that 50 cents, or whatever it is that we've got. Sometimes there's a check that was written 4 months ago, 2 months ago, a month ago, that didn't get cashed until this month. We need to show where that falls in the timeline. So you have to be able to have, I can't think of the best, the phrase that comes to mind is critical thinking skills, of being able to think of 8 different institutions all at the same time and remember where everybody is on that timeline, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. That does, absolutely. So you said sometimes mistakes happen and things come up. So how do you handle those sorts of things when something out of the ordinary happens? Because it sounds like that happens a lot.
It doesn't happen too terribly often. I mean, if I remember correctly, I have 8 regions under, or 8 groups under me, if I remember correctly, 8 or 9. And I want to say probably in a given month, it maybe happens once. And it really comes down to our favorite attribute, communication. Being able to say, hey, your book's closed at $12. I'm just making arbitrary numbers here. Your book's closed at $12 last month, but you're opening your books this month at $14. What happened? Where did this $2 come from? And really, it just comes down to communication, being able to reach out to your downline and say, this doesn't match. Can you explain this to me? Because sometimes it's just as simple as, oh, it's an interest charge I forgot to record on my report. So honestly,
Yeah.
everything can be solved with communication. Sometimes it even requires me reaching out to the bank, because it's kind of like, hey, I don't understand what happened here, because there have been times where there have been more as a local for me than as a regional, but there have been times where I've gotten bank statements where they didn't quite match up. And again, it just came down to, can you explain this to me? I need to be able to report it to my upline, and in order for them to understand it, I need to understand it.
Right. Absolutely. So you just said something really interesting, and that also dovetails in with another question that I had. You said as a local. So you served as a local treasurer before you were a regional treasurer. Is that something that you would recommend people do?
So yes and no. I have been in finance for almost 3 decades at this point. And when I moved to Onsiora in 2005, I was kind of like, oh, I'm in the accounting world, I'm in the finance world, I totally understand treasurer business. But in some instances, that could actually serve as a disservice to you in a treasurer position within the SCA, primarily because the SCA keeps books differently than most corporations do, whether nonprofit or otherwise. And I've worked for both. I've worked for Fortune 500, and I've worked for nonprofit. The books in the SCA are a completely different animal. In order to understand the reporting in this particular organization, I think serving as a local will help you prepare for what you're going to get as a regional. Do I think it's a necessity? Not necessarily, but I think it will help, at least with the lingo that the SCA uses for its reporting.
Yeah, that makes sense. I would think it would definitely be good just to kind of understand what the people underneath you are doing and going through.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
So, so do you think that having a financial background elsewhere, like you said, you've worked with money a lot in your jobs, you said that sort of helps, but not really. You have to learn things. Is that something that, you know, if you are someone that works in a financial arena, maybe you should consider trying to hold the treasurer's office?
Well, it's kind of a catch-22. I think understanding how money works, how financial institutions work will serve you. But at the same time, there are a lot of people I do know that hold a hesitation, because there is a certain stigma that is associated with the treasurer office, that if something were to go awry, it does actually have real life ramifications for someone who holds certification within the financial institution. So it's definitely not a job to be taken lightly. You want to make sure you're always aware of what's happening, make sure you're on top of your reporting. The minute something doesn't look right, you're reporting it to your upline, you're communicating with your downline, being as transparent as possible. Dealing with money is always scary. I will be 100% outright about that. But the best way to mitigate that is, as soon as you realize there's a problem, communicate it. Don't wait till tomorrow. Don't wait until next week. As soon as you get those records in front of you, like, this doesn't make sense, this doesn't match, get somebody on the phone. Whether it's the Seneschal, whether it's your immediate upline, in my case, Kingdom Exchequer, the group that the records aren't showing. Bring as much transparency, just flood that problem with light to bring it to a conclusion, get everybody involved as possible. I think that is the best way to mitigate any real life problems or misconceptions, I'm going to go with, in order to resolve a situation.
Gotcha. Makes sense. And yes, so I'm one of those people that the treasurer's office is scary to me. Like, I always tell people there are two offices that I would not hold in the SCA, and one is treasurer and one is MOC, because I'm not great with kids and money is scary to me. So what would you tell someone like me that is afraid of the position, you know, what are the things about it that make it not scary? You know, are there like forms? Are there checklists? What kind of safety nets, I guess, do you have in place to keep it from being as scary?
For someone who finds it scary or daunting, is honestly be a deputy, and be a deputy until you feel you're comfortable with it, whether that means that you're a deputy for one treasurer or two treasurers or five treasurers. Be a deputy, get exposed to the environment, get exposed to the verbiage, get exposed to the reporting until you because it is a language all of itself. And I would never put someone in this office who was even remotely hesitant about it. It's kind of like, sit here and be my deputy and ask the questions. I don't care if you have to ask the question 5 times. I would rather you ask the question 5 times than me put you in a position that you're not ready for and then set you up for failure. I would never want to do that to somebody. And even if you decide, you're like, you know what, I want to be a lifelong deputy. I never want to be the person who holds the purse strings, but I want to be the person who acts as support. There's a place for that. That's absolutely helpful to anybody, because I mean, heaven forbid, I could die of a heart attack tomorrow. And having someone like, okay, I understand what she's doing and I can get it done for the next month, but dear God, get somebody else in this position in the next month. That's perfect, you know? As long as there's that stopgap, I think it's great. I know a lot of people put a lot of emphasis on the treasurer office. And like I said, it does have real life emphasis or real life implications. I've had friends who have unfortunately had bad experiences within the treasurer office. And because of that, they will never be treasurer again. And I think it is a situation that the SCA not only has been robbed of a person who has a brilliant mind, but I also think it robs the person of an enrichment factor that they could have possibly given to the SCA, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. It's funny because something Adina said when she taught the local treasurer class was, you shouldn't be afraid of it as long as you communicate, which is something that you've stressed, and deposit the checks, which is important, as you know, deposit the checks, deposit the money, whatever. Don't stick it in a box in your closet, because then you're gonna have problems. Make sure you get that money as quick as you can and get it deposited. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, unfortunately, when I was a local, and I was a local, oh my God, has it been 10 years? It has been 10 years. We unfortunately had a situation where someone couldn't get to the bank right away. So they put the money in the place that they thought was the safest, which was the oven. Their spouse, not realizing that there was a box of money and checks in the oven, got ready to start dinner. And what do most of us do when we incorporate the oven? We preheat the oven.
Right.
There was a big fire.
Oh,
and unfortunately, we were able to recover some of the checks because it didn't all burn right away, but the cash is just gone. And now we have to turn around and go to corporate like, oh, so we think we had this much money, but we don't know. We have a box full of ash. I will always tell my people, like, if you have cash, get it into the bank. And more importantly, get it immediately into the bank account that it needs to go into. Do not put it in your own bank account. Never, ever, ever. I don't care how easy it is. Do not mix funds. Get the check, put it in the SCA account. Those funds should never meet your personal account. Things get shady real fast there. And you, again, transparency.
Do you think it makes it easier now that we can do like uploading check myself, but it's not like a ton of checks either? I don't know if any of the local treasurers utilize that sort of technology now.
You kind of broke up there. Do I think it's easier nowadays with the electronic checking?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I think it is so much easier now. I mean, I know personally, I use it for my own personal checks. I think on a nonprofit organization level, it makes it so much easier because, at my personal opinion, it just helps alleviate just one more step of never making sure those funds mix. You can just you can take a picture front and back, upload it to the SCA account, and call it good, and you're done.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. So what do you like most about being a regional treasurer?
Oh my goodness, what do I like most? Honestly, it's getting to know the different groups. Like, I'm aware of Stargate, I'm aware of Loxioye. Of course, I've got Bringelad and Finnegoth and Bjornsburg right here. But honestly, I think it's getting to meet people I may not have necessarily gotten to meet before. I unfortunately, just to my life, I'm not able to get to a lot of Stargate events. I'm not able to get a lot out to a lot of Locke or Ravensford events. Getting to meet other people, being able to have a conversation with their seneschals, having a conversation with their B&Bs, and getting a sense for the group through the B&Bs, the seneschal, and the treasurer. I don't think I would be able to do that while sitting at an event, while running around doing everything else I'm supposed to be doing or that I volunteer to do. That's probably one of my biggest pluses. Not to mention that I love problem solving. And so when one of my groups comes to me and says, hey, I don't understand X, Y, and Z, can you help me out? It's like, oh, great, let's work on this together. And so that teamwork of problem solving, I really enjoy that.
Awesome. What would you say surprised you the most so far about the office?
How quickly the train can fall off the rails. I actually just had a conversation with Kingdom this past weekend. It's kind of like, okay, I thought I knew what I was doing, but apparently I don't. I need your help. Because life kind of got crazy for me there this past month, 6 weeks, and I was doing pretty good on my reporting, and then I came back, and I remember where I stopped, and I tried to pick up where I left off. No. It was like kind of doing, when you get into a groove of something and then somebody interrupts you and you try to come back and you're like, where was I? That's exactly what happened to me. I was just kind of like, all of a sudden, none of this is making sense to me anymore. What happened here? And then you start digging a little bit more and you're realizing that, oh no, what happened? And like I said, I called Kingdom this past weekend and I was like, okay, I'm not entirely sure if I messed up or what happened, but help. And so I think that was probably what surprised me the most, is how quickly things can go south if you're not staying on top of things.
Oh yeah, I can imagine that is definitely true. Makes sense for sure. What do you think is something that we haven't talked about yet that someone applying to be a regional treasurer should know?
It's kind of an oxymoron, I guess, in the fact that it's not that serious, but it is. If something goes wrong, it's not the end of the world. We can figure it out. It's, at the end of the day, it's money. It's a financial institution. They, just like us, have to account for every penny. So as long as everything is on the up and up, we will find where the mistake happened. It's not a huge deal. I think a lot of people, as soon as you mention money, as soon as you mention treasure, they get all anxious and like, oh my God, it's fine. It's fine. We will figure it out. Let's just start, where's the problem, and let's work our way back. Especially in, like I said, the last couple months, I've been horrible about this. As long as you're staying on top of your reporting on a monthly basis, you're going to find the problem relatively quickly. Sometimes it's as easy as the bank statement said 0.04 and you typed in 0.40. It happens. It's a very simple fix. And at the end of the day, as long as you remember to communicate with your downline and with your upline, we'll fix it. It's not a big deal. I think that's the biggest thing I would want to stress to somebody is just communicate. I mean, it's unfortunately it's such a cliche saying, but it comes down to communication.
No, I think that's true for any office.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've been a regional hospitaler, and I've been a kingdom siege marshal and other, now I'm kingdom missile marshal. And just if you have problems, let us know. We can figure it out. So
The other thing too is also, I mean, on
um
top of the monthly reporting, is staying in contact with your various groups. What is, like in my particular instance, I had a group that went dormant, and there are starting to have conversations about potentially coming back. Okay, well, that introduces a whole other plethora of hurdles that we have to jump through, and the only way we're going to be able to get through those hurdles is as long as the group, the regional, and the kingdom are all in communication. We're all knowing who's doing what. I mean, there isn't a single problem that pops up in the treasurer office from a local level or from a regional level. I can't speak to kingdom yet because I haven't gotten there yet, but that can't be solved with just making sure everybody's in the know.
yep, absolutely. um so I think this is the case with your office. I know it is with other regional offices. Do you appoint the local treasurers in your area?
So the regionals do get the applications along as well as the seneschal and the B&B. I did talk to my upline. It's kind of like, how hands-on do you want to be? How hands-off do you want to be? Because I have been in other positions where Kingdom wanted to be involved. And in this instance, I was told, you make the decision. I'm not a micromanager in that particular instance. And I have said this to several B&Bs. It's kind of like, okay, I've gotten two applications for this particular position. What's your feedback? I don't know these people, so let me know what you think. And so I'll talk to the seneschal, I'll talk to the B&B, and I'll talk to the applicants themselves as well. And at the end of the day, I let the groups determine who their treasurer is going to be. I've been lucky so far in the fact that most groups, there's only been one applicant, so it's pretty easy after that. In the one instance I had to, I mean, it was a hard call. Both people that applied would have been phenomenal for the job. But my particular philosophy is, yes, I'm going to be working with you, but you're going to be representing this group. The group should be able to decide who is going to be their treasurer, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that definitely makes sense. You want the people that they're working with to be able to work with them. And although you are working with them, they'll be more closely working with the seneschal and the B&B. So
Exactly.
yeah, that definitely makes sense to me. That was all the questions that I have. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you feel like we need to discuss?
The other thing, I have had a couple questions when it comes to like the roundtables. Are the extracurricular classes, are they necessary as far as executing the office? I'm always going to side in the way of yes, because I'm never going to say that no, by all means, don't get more information, because anything can change within 6 months, so definitely go to the extracurricular classes. Even, again, someone who's new, who's like, I might be willing to do a treasurer office way back in the future. Okay, that's great. But if you're even remotely interested, take the extracurricular class. Understand, try to get familiar with the language. The forms, while they have changed over the past 20 years, they haven't changed that much, but they have changed enough where it can cause some confusion if you haven't stayed current with the conversations. So I will always advocate getting more knowledge. The one thing I will not advocate is, just because you have a bachelor's, a master's, and associates in finance or accounting, it may actually do you a disservice in this particular office, because the SCA does keep their books in a rather interesting manner. Like I said, when I was a local, I came in with that mentality of like, oh, I've worked in finance. I totally get it. And the first time I opened the books, I'm like, what is this? It was very interesting. But then once I got into it, I'm like, oh, it makes complete sense. But you walk in thinking you're going to find an elephant, and come to find out, no, it's a koala bear. So getting familiar, if you even remotely think at some point in the near future you want to become an exchequer or be part of the exchequer track, start getting involved in the conversations as quickly as possible. Get that not influence, what am I looking for, exposure to the reporting. Talk to people who are in the offices, get an understanding for the language.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that makes sense for sure. I know a lot of people don't, enjoy roundtable, but it's definitely a necessary thing, and it's only every 6 months, so.
Exactly. And I mean, the SCA is this living organism, and it changes a lot, and I understand that. But by and large, money is money. It's not going to change that much. And it's what, an hour of your day? Just pop in, take a, even if it's just the reporting class, just get an idea what changes may have happened to the reporting. I think is great. Somebody who maybe isn't ready to become a deputy, isn't ready to become an officer, talk to the officers that are, and this for any office, talk to the officers, talk to the deputies of those officers, and start getting an idea of what the class, or not the class, what the office entails. And I mean, I'm always a big proponent of inserting yourself into a situation if you want to know more. That's the only way you're going to learn.
Absolutely. And it helps if you have someone to train you for a little while before you're actually there trying to do it by yourself.
Right.
So
And
I
I
think
remember
that's
when
a
I
great
was a
idea.
deputy, for 2 years before I took over the Exchequer office. But I was asked, are you ready to take it over? And I'm pretty sure if I had said no, I could have continued on being a deputy for another 2 years. There is nothing wrong with staying a deputy for however long it takes you to be comfortable in the position.
Yep, absolutely. Makes sense for sure. Does anyone else on the call have any questions for Baroness Magdalena about being a regional treasurer and what that entails? Uther, I know you were late. I'm sorry.
Hello, Uther.
We will post the video tomorrow, so you'll get to see all the stuff that we talked about before you came on.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I tried to log in like around like 7:07. And so I just couldn't catch anybody. It's all right.
Oh, no
Oh,
problem.
nope, I was facilitating, so it's my fault. I didn't see you until a little bit later, so.
Oh no. I mean, I was legitimately late. So
No
so this
problem.
is like for the region. This is for a regional. It wasn't for.
Yes, regional treasurer, yes.
Oh.
We did have a class on local treasurer as well that Adina taught, and the video is available. I believe it's on the list of classes that we have posted, so you can go check that one out too.
I guess it'd be, I guess how often do you have to make the in-person like visits to like for the station?
So ideally, doing a book review should, if I remember correctly, it should be done annually. That way you can just kind of sit back, or not sit back, you can sit with the treasurer and take a look at their books and make sure that everything is copacetic, which it should be because they're handing reports to you every month. But it does not hurt to sit down and actually look at the books along with the treasurer. Something that I even advocated as a local is when the region office changed hands, sitting down with the new regions, like, okay, look, this is where we're at. This is what's going on. This may look a little weird because this random thing happened here. Again, it comes back to communication. It comes back down to transparency. Being able, now obviously right now in the interesting times that we live in, I'm not going to require anybody to sit down in person with me. But I am in communication with my various groups. And as soon as I have a question, I do ask via email or via IM. The majority of them I'm able to talk via IM. Sometimes it's via email. And all of them have been great about getting back to me as quickly as possible.
Well, the nice thing too is now that we have, you know, Zoom capability and we're also used to using it, you could potentially use that and just have them share their screen and go through everything. You know?
Absolutely. Definitely. Mm-hmm.
So I have a question. If I recall
Technology is good sometimes.
If I recall,
go ahead, Nikkei.
Sorry, no worries. If I recall correctly, the regional exchequer is a signature authority on the branch's bank accounts. I know even within the local branch, getting all of the people properly onto the signature card was a huge pain, much less having to get someone in from out of town. How do you handle that to simplify that process, or is it not simple?
Unfortunately, it's not simple. I have been on the phone with several banks, especially in the past couple months. Come on, look, I'm in Austin. This particular group is in Beaumont. I'm the regional. I'm supposed to be on the signatory. What can we do? And unfortunately, various financial institutions have their set requirements, and they're not going to deviate from them for whatever reason. And I completely understand that. So in this particular situation, unfortunately, I haven't been able to make the drive down to various financial institutions. So I'm not on the signatory as of right now. We're trying to work with banks. The majority of them do, actually all of them that I've spoken to so far, do require that everybody show up, and that's just next to impossible right now. I think it's the bank that's in Ravensford. It's not even open to the public right now, if I remember correctly. I don't remember off the top of my head, or at least it wasn't as a couple of months ago. So this has been one of those situations where we can't exactly have that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been difficult to navigate that particular requirement, unfortunately.
Even outside COVID times, getting everyone to a bank in North Houston's not trivial.
Right. Unfortunately, I can't speak to non-COVID times. I came into the office in late January, early February, just as everything was kicking off. I know, I mean, I can sympathize as a local. What was that? Almost 10 years ago. The bank, I think it was IBC Bank, required us all to show up. And it was just trying to coordinate 5 different people to show up at a singular time was just moving Mount Olympus. So unfortunately, I don't have any experience pre-COVID. I'm just trying to navigate through COVID right now on top of everything else.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
As Kingdom Exchequer, I will say that the changing of signatories on bank accounts is one of the most difficult things we deal with within the Exchequer branch. And we have an actual added process that we now have that we didn't used to have before, and that is society requires a specific form to be completed and submitted through me to society. And society contacts the banks to provide them any of the SCA, I think tax identification information, et cetera, whatever from their end, because on, at least for me as a Kingdom account, the Kingdom account also needs to have Society Exchequer on our account, which currently is located in Washington State. So that is a little bit more complicated as well. And as Dina mentioned, each bank has their own process, and trying to work within the SCA processes in conjunction with the bank processes can unfortunately sometimes be very complex. And it has been made even more complex, as Dina pointed out, with COVID. Fortunately, there have been some banks, if they have enough branches, such as some of the larger banks like Bank of America, Chase, they'll at least allow some of those people to go into a local branch and do all the signatory information. They're able to pull things up electronically and link accounts and stuff like that. But when we deal with some of the smaller ones, it does really get a lot more complicated. So you have to do kind of what Dina and the branch treasurers have had to do, and just be on the phone with the banks and see first find out what their process is, and then determine what you can do to work within that process to accommodate what you want to accomplish. And sometimes the banks might be willing to work with you, or at least explain some alternate processes, or they may be sticklers and stick with their process, and it draws everything out for several months.
Oh yeah,
I can believe it. I mean, 2 years ago when I was on our local bank account as part of the financial committee, it took, I think, 3 trips to the bank and me sitting there and fussing at them of, we cannot get 5 people who live an hour and a half away from each other all in here at the same time. What can I do in order to get each of them to come in on their schedule and make this happen? And it took a lot of yelling, and this was totally pre-COVID, and we made it happen. It was totally non-trivial.
oh yeah, definitely. I mean, even with Finningoth, which, I mean, I live within the realm of Finningoth, the bank here absolutely refuses to do anything unless all of us are present. And I'm like, you're asking for the impossible in an already impossible situation. There has got to be something. I mean, I understand processes are a thing. I understand rules are rules, but we're living in unprecedented times. We need to think, we need to think outside the box here.
And I think something, even when we hopefully get past this, we hopefully will at some point, we will get past this, positive thinking there. It would be nice if the banks, because some banks aren't, to do business of this nature, signatory cards and things like that, you have such limited hours. I think if banks would be willing to, you go in and yell at them or whatever you need to do, strongly word things, it might be trying to make some kind of arrangements to say, okay, we can't get this many people here on a weekday. That's impossible. Can you at least accommodate us for a time on a Saturday morning when you have lobby hours or when you have something else to try and accommodate that? That's one thing I would probably recommend or stress to the branch groups, is try and find someone at the bank, not just a teller, but some type of representative at the bank that you can start developing a relationship with that will hopefully stay at the bank for a while, that you can go to hopefully help you facilitate some of these things when you have issues with your account and for changing signatories. I know that was one of the things when we were changing the signatories on the Kingdom account. We had some issues with the banks here in Oklahoma, but Eleanor, who lives in Texas and previous Exchequer, she had a good relationship with a representative at the branch down there, and so that person was able to really help us facilitate the changeover, even though it was changing to all signatories living in Oklahoma. Because we had someone helping us walk through the process, it really made it a lot easier. So that's one thing I would stress, is just trying to find somebody at the bank that you can develop that kind of relationship with, who can be an advocate for you, hopefully on your behalf.
Absolutely.
So is there any benefit, or would it be reasonable to consider trying to consolidate all of the branch groups into a, 1 or 2 banks, especially if we know 1 or 2 banks that do tend to work better with the frequent changeover signatory cards? I know this is getting a little bit off topic, but it's gotten me thinking now.
No, it's actually not off topic. I know that was a conversation that we had there in Bringwell when I was treasurer. We were thinking about maybe we should all go to bank, because if I remember correctly, at the time, Mistress Chandra was Kingdom Exchequer, and there was conversations about everybody going to Bank of America, everybody going to Wells Fargo. But at that particular time, I think there were other nuances that the particular B&B or the particular treasurer lived in a place where they didn't have those particular banks. They only had the small mom and pops, and so required to go to a Bank of America or a Wells Fargo would require like an hour drive out of their way. I mean, I like the idea, but at the same time, I also don't have to drive an hour to get to a Bank of America or Wells Fargo. On a kingdom level, Myra, I mean, I'm not sure what you're seeing on your side on that.
Kind of the same situation you just described. I will actually tell you, Kingdom uses Bank of America. There is not a Bank of America in the city I'm located in. I have to drive an hour to either Tulsa or Oklahoma City to actually go into a physical bank to do any business. So for Kingdom business, I do a lot of deposits, and I don't do any of the electronic scan the check and upload it. I'm still old school, I guess. So I actually stamp the back of the checks with the deposit stamp, and so all of the deposits that I make for the Kingdom for heraldry checks or NMS or profits, well, those go to my NMR deputy. So anything I receive, I'm doing banking by mail. I fill out a deposit slip. I stamp the back of the checks. I put it in an envelope, and it gets mailed to Bank of America because like I said, I am an hour to an hour and a half away from a Bank of America location.
And I guess you aren't dealing with cash much because, yeah.
Yeah, I am fortunately not dealing with cash. Everything I receive are transfers from other branches within the Kingdom. So I always receive pretty much checks. So for a local group that would be dealing with cash either from an event or cash that's been handed to them for a heraldry submission or things like that, having someplace local to go and deposit that is the best option, because I would be extremely leery of putting cash in the mail.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially right now, it's terrible. Especially here, like in Lawton, it took me to get a check from my mom. I'm not even kidding. 7 months at one point.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I don't know if you could like go to another banking institution and essentially get them to take the cash and write a check for you for that cash, but
The price checks are now.
Some banks will do that, but there's usually a fee associated with it as well. If you are not a member of that particular bank.
And this
Correct.
is why people will go ahead and just write out their personal account, and now you're mixing your personal money and the Kingdom money, and don't do that.
That's called commingling of funds, and I actually
Yes.
almost had an issue with that in regards to a check that was sent to me for Kingdom, repayment of a Kingdom advance, and the check was written to me and not Kingdom of Onstiora. So I actually, Dina talked a little bit earlier about communication with upline. I'm sure anytime Mazel, who's our corporate treasurer, or currently Roberta, but will be Society Exchequer is transitioning. And unfortunately, the new one, her name just totally escapes me at the moment. I'm sure every time they open their inbox and see Kingdom of Onstiora, they're probably going, okay, what question does she have today? So because I'm very much the type of person I would rather ask permission and ask how to do it and how to take care of something than to just do it and cause a future issue.
Yep.
And so I had to ask them how to handle that situation. So yeah, I understand. The other thing we talked about going to a bank, the other option would be if they had a place like a Walmart or a supermarkets to have, the little money areas, possibly getting a cashier's check or a money order, but then again, you have a fee associated with that. So that again is problematic. So yeah, if we could do everything electronically, our lives would be so much easier. But we're not quite there yet. And the concept of having basically branches and the kingdom all on the same, or all banking at the same institution would be amazing. But so many of our groups are just located in areas where that's not conducive for them to be able to conduct their daily business.
Totally reasonable. I wonder, even if we could reduce it down to 2 or 3 institutions, Chase, Bank of America, and something else, it might be an improvement at the very least.
I mean, that's definitely something to consider. And are web banks a thing anymore? I don't remember off the top of my head, because that's possibly even an avenue we could probably explore, but I don't even know if web banks are a thing anymore.
So how much for this office, how much experience do you need? Like, say, like, do you need to have been like a local herald at one point to apply to be regional? Like, so that'd probably be ideal, or?
I think it would help. I don't think it's necessary to be a local before you're a regional, but I do think there is a lot of knowledge to be gained by being a local before you're a regional. If for no other reason, you get to understand the reporting for your group before you're having to understand the reporting for, in my case, 9 groups. I mean, it's a language all in it. The reporting in the SCA is a language all of its own. I come from a financial background. I'm 35 years in finance, and I was not prepared for the reporting when I first walked in as a local. So again, I'm not going to say it's necessary, but I think it would help you immensely to start off as a local before you jump into regional.
All right. Anybody else have any questions? We have about 7 minutes left.
This was interesting. Thank you very much for doing this, Dina.
No problem. Thank you so much for the questions. I mean, it revisits a lot of questions I know that a lot of people have asked over the years, and I know times change. And I think those are questions we need to continually ask ourselves, especially when it comes to the technology and as it evolves around money. So thank you for the questions.
Definitely. Thanks everybody so much for your participation and for attending.
Thank you for setting it up,
And
Kat.
I will get the video posted probably tomorrow.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
And yeah, everybody have a good rest of your night, and we will talk to you later.
All right.
All right.
Have a good night.
All right.
Night.
You too.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.